It was a cool Monday morning when 14-year-old Maya Williams stepped into the grand lobby of Riverview Bank. Her navy blazer hugged her shoulders, the school crest pinned proudly over her heart. She had practiced this moment all weekend, her first solo bank deposit. In her satchel was a $5,000 scholarship check she'd earned through late nights of studying and relentless dedication. It wasn't just money, it was her proof. Proof that she belonged in the world of achievers. The marble floors echoed beneath her loafers as she approached the counter, her hand gripping a folder stuffed with documentation. Her stomach fluttered, not from fear, but from hope. She imagined calling her mom afterward, telling her how she'd handled it all like a grown-up. Behind the counter, however, something shifted. The branch manager, a woman in a tailored suit with sharp eyes, glanced over. Her smile faltered the moment she saw Maya. The air turned cold. "For someone your age, where did this come from?" the woman asked, her voice louder than it needed to be. Maya's heart pounded. She was ready for responsibility, but not for suspicion. Not like this. And certainly not because of how she looked. The words hung in the air like an accusation. "For someone your age, where did this come from?" Maya Williams clenched her jaw. Her heart hammered against her rib cage, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had practiced this. Her mother had always said, "Dignity isn't about how others treat you, it's how you respond." "It's my academic scholarship," Maya answered, holding out her school ID and the award letter. "All my documentation is right here." The teller didn't even glance at the papers. Instead, he tilted the check toward the light, scrutinizing it like it was counterfeit. His eyebrows crept upward. "Hold on," he muttered before walking off with the check toward the back. Maya stood still, her fingers twitching slightly at her sides. She could feel eyes on her now, some curious, others judgmental. She smoothed her skirt and straightened her shoulders, but inside her confidence began to crack. Minutes passed. Then the manager, the same woman who had first questioned her, returned to the counter. Her name tag read Victoria Hayes. Victoria didn't look at Maya. Instead, she addressed the teller who had returned empty-handed. "We've had too many fake checks come through lately," she said, loud enough for the customers behind Maya to hear. "We'll need to verify this thoroughly." "But I gave you everything," Maya began, her voice soft but urgent. Victoria cut her off. "That's not our problem," she said curtly. "You'll wait." Maya's face flushed. The line behind her grew. People whispered. She could feel the scrutiny burning into her skin. She turned to ask if she could use the bank's phone. Her own was still in her locker at school, but Victoria was already walking away, heels clicking on the marble floor. The teller gave Maya a disinterested shrug and returned to his station. So Maya waited. And waited. She shifted awkwardly to the side, trying to stay out of the way. Her eyes scanned the room. Business people in sleek suits were greeted warmly. Elderly couples were offered seats. But no one acknowledged her. No one asked if she was okay. She was just a kid, yes, but she wasn't invisible. At least she didn't want to be. 20 minutes passed. The whispers hadn't stopped. A mother in line held her toddler a little closer, as if Maya were a threat. A man in a tan coat glanced at her and then looked away quickly. Maya's breathing became shallow. This wasn't just about a check anymore. It was about how she looked, how she was seen. She'd spent her whole life believing that if she worked hard enough, she'd be judged by her merits. That morning, she had walked into Riverview Bank proud. Now she just felt small. She took a deep breath and tried to ground herself. Stay calm, observe, learn. Her mother always said the world could be unfair, but the most dangerous thing was to stop noticing. So Maya watched. She saw Victoria cheerfully welcome a white couple who had just walked in. "Right this way," she said with a grin, offering them bottled water as she led them to a private desk. Then she saw a man with an accent approach the counter with paperwork in hand. Victoria didn't even let him speak. "Sorry," she snapped. "System's down. Come back another time." Maya's stomach twisted. There was a pattern, a cruel, clear pattern. People who looked like them were treated like they belonged. People who looked like her weren't. A chill swept over her as she shifted her weight, her legs beginning to ache. It had been nearly an hour. No one had checked on her. No one had offered a seat. She was a child standing silently in the corner of a corporate vault of glass and marble, and the people in charge had made their judgment the moment she walked in. Then came the final sting. Victoria, standing across the room, leaned over and whispered something to the teller, but her voice wasn't low enough. "Keep an eye on her," she said, glancing toward Maya. "Make sure she doesn't try anything." Maya's chest tightened. A lump rose in her throat, but she swallowed it down. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not for them. The security guard shifted his stance near the doorway, his gaze fixed on her now, not on the customers flowing in and out. Just her, as if she were a threat. A 14-year-old girl with a scholarship check and honor roll grades. A threat. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, her fingers curled around the strap of her satchel. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was something bigger, something ugly and familiar, even if she hadn't lived it before. She was being profiled. She knew that word. She'd seen the stories on TV, read the articles her mother left out on the kitchen counter. But now she wasn't just reading about injustice. She was breathing it, living it. She slowly sat down on a bench near the back wall. No one told her she could, but no one stopped her either. She reached into her satchel and pulled out her leather-bound notebook, the one she always carried. It was a habit her mother had taught her. Write things down, names, times, faces, words. She opened it and began to write. Maya's hand trembled slightly as she scribbled into her leather notebook, the words flowing faster than she could process them. Her handwriting was messy now, her letters colliding, names, descriptions, timestamps. Her eyes darted from person to person across the bank floor, capturing it all. Victoria Hayes had whispered to the teller to keep an eye on her. The security guard now stood just feet away, arms folded, gaze fixed on her, like she might run off with someone else's money. Maya's jaw clenched. The weight of suspicion hung around her neck like a chain. She had done everything right, and yet here she was, watched, judged, isolated. This wasn't about protocol. This was about perception. She could see it so clearly now. The elderly white couple who had walked in after her were sipping complimentary tea in the glassed-in VIP lounge. Victoria herself had led them there, offering smiles and small talk. Meanwhile, the man with the accent, whose eyes had lit up with hope when he approached, had been dismissed like a nuisance. Victoria had turned him away with a single sentence. Systems down. But the system was working fine when those who belonged walked in. Maya's stomach nodded. She wasn't just being treated differently. She was witnessing a hierarchy in action, right here in this clean, shiny institution with its gold-plated pens and marble countertops. And it wasn't subtle anymore. She wrote, 11:46 a.m., man in gray jacket, thick Eastern European accent, turned away by Victoria without checking system. Said system was down. 11:49 a.m., white couple, same paperwork, same timing, greeted warmly, escorted to VIP, no delays, no excuses. She paused, her pen hovering midair. 11:52 a.m., security instructed to keep an eye on me. Maya's throat tightened. These weren't isolated moments. They were patterns, intentional, repeated, unchallenged, and suddenly she remembered something else her mother had taught her. Discrimination doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, calmly, politely, behind closed doors. Well, this whisper had a name, and Maya was going to write it down. Victoria Hayes. She underlined it twice in her notebook. Then something strange caught her eye. Across the room, Victoria was no longer playing hostess. She was standing in front of a sharply dressed man Maya hadn't noticed before. He looked important. His suit was charcoal gray, tailored, expensive. His hair was slicked back, and he carried himself like he owned every room he entered. Victoria's posture shifted when she stood next to him, less arrogant, more cautious, almost deferential. Maya couldn't hear their conversation, but she could feel its weight. And then Victoria pulled something from behind the counter, a manila folder. It had a bright red stamp across the front. Confidential. The man took it casually, but Maya saw the flicker of urgency in Victoria's eyes. This wasn't routine. Whatever was in that folder wasn't meant to be shared, and definitely not with him. Maya's breath caught. She leaned forward slightly on the bench, watching every detail. The man opened the folder, scanned a few pages, then gave a slow, satisfied nod. Maya blinked. Her heart began to race for reasons entirely different now. She had heard that name before. Harrison Wells, her mother had mentioned it. Not often, but enough for Maya to remember. Chief Executive Officer of Meridian Bank Group. Ruthless. A competitor. The kind of man her mother said would shake your hand with one while stealing with the other. And now here he was, accepting a confidential folder from Victoria Hayes inside the bank her mother's firm had recently acquired. This wasn't a coincidence. It was sabotage. Maya's fingers flew across the pages of her notebook. She documented everything. Wells' arrival, the timestamp, the description of the folder, Victoria's hushed demeanor. Her breath was shallow now, and a new kind of fear crept into her chest. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about her mother, her firm, everything they'd built. Victoria wasn't just racist, she was treacherous. Maya wanted to stand up and shout, to rip the folder from Wells' hands and expose the entire scene. But she knew better. Now was not the time for anger. Now was the time for evidence. The moment passed quickly. Wells closed the folder, shook Victoria's hand, and turned to leave. As he passed Maya's bench, he barely looked at her. Just a flick of the eyes, like he was glancing at a potted plant. And then he was gone. Victoria stood for a moment, watching him go. When she turned back toward the bank floor, her expression was harder, colder, her eyes locked with Maya's. Maya straightened her spine instinctively. She didn't look away. Victoria did. But the manager walked briskly back to her post, lips pressed tight. Her heels clicked louder than ever on the marble, like war drums echoing across a battlefield. And Maya? She gripped her notebook and whispered silently to herself, I'm not just a girl with a check anymore. She had a story, a secret, and now she had a mission. Maya sat frozen on the bench, her heart drumming against her ribs, her fingers clenching the edges of her notebook so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Victoria had looked at her, really looked, and Maya saw something new in the bank manager's eyes. Not arrogance, not amusement, but fear. The kind of fear people wear when they know they've been seen. Victoria turned away quickly, her composure cracking just slightly. Her heel caught on the edge of a rug as she moved too quickly behind the counter, and Maya saw her lips moving as she whispered furiously to the teller, Tom. He nodded once, eyes flickering toward Maya, and then disappeared through a side door near the vault. Maya didn't move, didn't blink. She had her evidence, her notes, the folder, Harrison Wells. She didn't yet know what she'd do with it, but instinct told her to wait. Something was coming, and it did. At exactly 12:14 p.m., the front doors of Riverview Bank opened, and a wave of air swept into the lobby. Light from the street poured in behind a tall, poised figure in a deep plum blazer and jet black heels. Dr. Alana Williams. Maya's mother didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence was a statement all its own, composure wrapped in authority, elegance edged with resolve. Her eyes scanned the room like a searchlight sweeping through fog. Then she saw her daughter, her only daughter, sitting stiff and silent on a bench like a criminal waiting to be booked. Alana's steps were swift but unhurried. Her heels struck the floor with calm finality, cutting through the murmur of conversations. As she reached Maya, she crouched down, not as a CEO, not as a powerhouse, but as a mother. Maya, she said gently, are you okay? Maya swallowed hard, her throat aching. I'm fine, she lied, but there's something you need to know. Alana stood and turned. Victoria Hayes had stepped forward, that familiar fake smile plastered on her face like wallpaper. Dr. Williams, she greeted, voice syrupy. I wasn't expecting you today. Is there something I can… Alana held up one hand. Spare me the theatrics, she said flatly. The temperature in the lobby dropped 5 degrees. Alana didn't waste a second. She turned back to Maya, who stood now, notebook clutched to her chest. Tell me everything. And she did. Maya's voice didn't shake this time. With precision and clarity, she relayed every detail. How Victoria had questioned her eligibility, how the teller had held up her scholarship check like it was forged, how security had been told to watch her, and most of all, what she had seen with Harrison Wells. Victoria's face paled. The customers around them fell silent. Even the typing at the teller's desks stopped. Maya read directly from her notes. The time Wells arrived, the folder labeled confidential, the exchange between him and Victoria, and the cold dismissal of other customers who didn't fit the mold. When she finished, the entire bank lobby felt like it was holding its breath. Alana turned slowly to Victoria. Her voice was calm, too calm. You told my daughter the system was down. You refused her service. You isolated her. You made her wait like she was a criminal. Meanwhile, you handed proprietary data to my company's biggest competitor. Victoria tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. I don't know what your daughter thinks she saw. She knows what she saw, Alana cut in, her voice now edged with steel. And so does everyone in this room. Victoria's lips parted, but no words came. Where is the folder? Alana asked coldly. Victoria didn't answer, but the damage was done. Victoria didn't answer, but the damage was done. Alana turned to the guard, the same man who had watched Maya like a threat for over an hour. Please escort Miss Hayes from the building, she said. Immediately. The guard hesitated, then nodded. He moved toward Victoria, who backed up half a step, and then composed herself. This isn't over, Victoria muttered. No, Alana replied. It's just beginning. As Victoria was escorted out of the bank, her pride crumpling with each reluctant step, Alana turned back to the customers. My daughter came here today to deposit a scholarship check, a legitimate, hard-earned check, and she was humiliated, profiled, disrespected. Whispers rippled through the lobby. This bank will undergo a full review starting today, Alana announced. There will be accountability. There will be change. She turned to Maya. You stood your ground when no one else did. I am proud of you. Maya's eyes welled with tears, but this time they weren't from humiliation. They were from pride and power. Because for the first time, everyone was listening. In the days that followed, the world inside Riverview Bank didn't just shift, it cracked wide open. By Tuesday morning, the corporate office had launched a full investigation into the events surrounding Maya Williams' visit. Staff were questioned, surveillance footage was pulled, and Maya's meticulously detailed notebook, it became the centerpiece of it all. Every timestamp, every discriminatory incident she had documented, confirmed, verified, unshakable. Victoria Hayes never returned to her position. Instead, she became the subject of both an internal ethics probe and a legal review for breach of contract and suspected corporate espionage. Her connection to Harrison Wells unraveled fast. The confidential folder she had handed over, it contained sensitive performance metrics and strategic plans from Dr. Alana Williams' firm, plans Wells had hoped to use to undercut a merger. But thanks to Maya, that door never opened. And as the truth came to light, the story began to spread. First within the company, then on local news, then across the country. 14-year-old exposes banking bias and corporate sabotage, read one headline. She went to deposit a scholarship check. What she uncovered changed everything, said another. But Maya never sought the spotlight. In fact, when a reporter called her school, she asked them not to give interviews without permission. It wasn't about fame, it was about fairness. Still, the ripple effects couldn't be stopped. The bank's leadership was overhauled. Executives resigned. A third-party equity consultant was brought in to train staff on racial bias, customer engagement, and ethical conduct. A new department focused entirely on equitable banking practices was created. And Melody Tran, the soft-spoken junior teller who had offered Maya water and tried to help, was promoted to assistant branch manager within weeks. But the biggest shift didn't happen behind boardroom doors. It happened in May. That Friday, she stood in front of her peers at Westridge Academy during morning assembly. The principal had invited her to speak. Just 5 minutes. She didn't write a speech. She didn't need to. She stood in her uniform, blazer buttoned, and looked out at a sea of students. Many who had never known what she had just lived. Others who knew it all too well. I went to the bank last week to deposit a scholarship check, she began, her voice steady, and I was treated like I didn't belong. Silence settled over the auditorium. Not because my papers weren't right, not because the system was broken, but because of the way I looked, because of who they thought I was before I even said a word. Some students looked stunned. Others nodded slowly. But that day also reminded me of something my mom always says. You don't have to scream to speak the truth. You just have to be willing to stand in it. She paused, locking eyes with a few of the younger girls in the front row. I stood in it, and it hurt, but I wrote it down. I told the truth. And because of that, things changed. Applause broke out, not wild but sincere. It started slow, then grew. Teachers stood, so did the dean. That weekend, Maya was invited to speak at a local youth equity conference, then a financial literacy workshop, then a podcast. She wasn't just the girl who had been humiliated in the bank lobby anymore. She was the girl who turned humiliation into transformation. At home, Alana watched her daughter grow before her eyes. There were nights Maya stayed up late, researching bias in banking and public systems. She started sketching out a plan for a teen-led initiative called Open Access, a program that would help other students navigate financial institutions, understand their rights, and recognize discrimination when it happened. Even if you're 14, Maya said, you deserve respect. The bank eventually issued a public apology. Maya didn't attend the press conference, but she read the statement. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. What mattered more was the handwritten letter she received a week later from a young black girl in a neighboring town who had seen her story on YouTube. Thank you for showing them we don't have to stay quiet. I used to think people like us had to just take it, but now I know we don't. Maya folded that letter and placed it in the back of her notebook, right behind her last journal entry from the bank that day. It read, "They thought I came to deposit money. But I came to deposit change." Months had passed, but the echo of that day in the bank still lingered, not as a wound, but as a spark. What began as humiliation had evolved into a movement. Maya Williams, once a quiet honor student with a scholarship check in hand, had become a voice, clear, unwavering, and impossible to ignore. Her program, Open Access, quickly gained traction. Partnering with local schools and nonprofits, Maya led workshops teaching young people how to handle financial systems, how to speak up, and, most importantly, how to believe they belonged in spaces that tried to shut them out. Her sessions weren't just educational, they were empowering. Kids lined up after each talk just to say, "Thank you for standing up. Because of you, I'm not scared anymore." At home, Maya still kept her leather-bound notebook on her desk. Pages once filled with pain had become pages of purpose, plans, letters, community goals, and on the inside cover, she had written a quote from her mother. "The world may not hand you justice, but if you hold your ground, you might just carve it out yourself." One afternoon, as she closed her notebook, Maya looked out her bedroom window, smiling softly. She hadn't just changed a policy, she had changed a culture, and all it took was refusing to stay silent. Life lesson. Never let silence be the end of your story. Maya Williams walked into that bank to make a simple deposit. What she didn't expect was to be treated like a suspect instead of a scholar. But in that moment of humiliation, she made a decision, not to shrink, not to scream, but to observe, document, and stand her ground. And that made all the difference. The lesson here isn't just about racism, or banking, or policy. It's about dignity. It's about what we do when the world tries to define us before we speak. Maya didn't have power in the traditional sense. She was 14, no lawyer, no camera crew, just a notebook. And the truth. But she used both to build a platform that others could stand on. So remember this. You don't need permission to speak up. You don't need credentials to be right. And you don't need a title to change the rules. What you need is courage. The kind that starts quiet but ends loud. Because silence might protect your comfort, but truth protects your future. Don't just demand respect. Document, speak, act, and let the world know you're not here to fit in. You're here to change it.